Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're trying to get a handle on something pretty fundamental. How do we actually understand power between nations?
Yeah, it's a big question. And we've got this source material that lays out two really interesting ways to look at it.
Right, two lenses, geopolitics and geocivilization. Sounds a bit academic, maybe, but the ideas are crucial.
Definitely. So this document explains both, where they came from, how they're different.
And our mission, I guess, for this deep dive is to really unpack those differences.
Exactly. What does each one help us see? What does it maybe miss?
Okay, let's start with maybe the more familiar one, geopolitics. It's been around a bit longer.
The source defines it as basically how physical stuff, geography, location, climate, resources influences politics.
How the map influences decisions, essentially.
You got it. And the source traces it back to the 19th century. Mentions guys like Ratzel.
Oh, yeah, with the Lebensraum idea, living space.
That's the one. And Helford Mackinder, too.
The heartland theory. Control Eurasia, control the world, something like that.
Pretty much. Their focus was really on these, tangible geographic factors driving state power and, ambition.
So geopolitics helps explain why some countries are maybe more powerful or why they make certain moves based on geography.
Exactly. It's about understanding those strategic calculations.
The source uses the Cold War as an example. That makes sense. It wasn't just about communism versus capitalism, was it?
No, not purely. The document stresses that a lot of it was driven by short-term strategic thinking.
Like what?
Well, like stopping the other side from expanding, securing access to resources, controlling key territories. Very state-focused.
It's about what the states themselves are doing, their policies.
Precisely, driven by those immediate needs and perceived threats.
Okay, so that's geopolitics, but then there's this other concept, geocivilization. Newer, right. The source mentions Ahmed Serete.
Yeah, it came about more in the 2000s. And Surrette's point is basically that geopolitics, it's too narrow, it misses something important.
Okay, that something is...
A nation's civilizational ideas. It's about the deeper stuff, values, beliefs, a whole worldview.
Ah, okay. So not just the map, but the mindset too.
Kind of. Serrett argues these ideas aren't just, fluff. They actively shape how nations interact and can even be a source of competitive advantage.
Interesting. So it's about the collective who we are influencing foreign policy.
That's a good way to put it. The source gives examples, like Islamic civilization.
What does it highlight there?
It points to values like peace, justice, equality as being central, and it suggests these values fueled achievements in science, art, culture historically.
So the idea is that these core beliefs project a kind of influence beyond just military or economic power.
Right, that seems to be the argument, yeah. It's a different kind of power, maybe.
Yeah, and then it contrasts this with Western civilization.
Right, the document links that to ideas like individualism, freedom, democracy.
And suggests these have contributed to the West's, economic and political influence over time.
Exactly, and you can see straight away this is a much longer-term perspective than geopolitics.
Yeah, it's looking at deep cultural currents, historical development, not just the latest strategic move.
Absolutely. It shifts the focus from immediate state policy to that broader sweep of history and culture.
Okay, let's really try and nail down the key differences then. The source seems quite clear on this.
Yeah, it lays them out nicely. First big one, time frame.
Right. Geopolitics, short-term, strategic, like the Cold War example.
Immediate goals, competition.
Whereas geocivilization is thinking, much longer term. Cultural, historical shifts.
The source uses the European Union as a potential example here, not just a trade bloc maybe.
But potentially driven by a deeper long-term shared interest in peace, prosperity, maybe shared values.
Exactly. It's a different timescale altogether. Cold War strategy versus, say, centuries of European development leading to the EU.
Okay, timescale. What else? Scope.
Yes, scope is different too. Geopolitics often zooms in on relations within a region.
Like state rivalries in the Middle East.
Perfect example. That's classic geopolitical analysis, who's competing with whom in that specific area.
But geocivilization looks broader, across regions.
It can, yeah. It might look at connections between nations that share, say, a civilizational background, even if they're geographically distant.
Like the idea of an Islamic world as a community.
Yeah.
Connected by heritage and values, not just borders.
Exactly. That shared identity, those cultural links across borders, that's more of a geo-civilizational perspective than just looking at state versus state in one region.
Got it. So, time frame, scope, and the nature of power itself seems different too.
How so?
Well, geopolitics often feels a bit like a zero-sum game, right? My gain is your loss.
Yeah, the Cold War certainly felt like that. One side advances, the other loses ground. Very competitive.
But geocivilization seems to allow more room for cooperation, shared goals.
Potentially, yes. The source suggests that shared civilizational ideas could lead to collaboration for mutual benefit.
Like the EU again. Despite all its problems, the idea is cooperation for common goals like trade, security.
Right. It's not necessarily zero-sum. There's at least the theoretical possibility of win-win based on shared values or long-term interests. That's quite a different view of power.
So this all sounds interesting, but why does it matter to, someone trying to understand the news or global events? Why should you care?
Well, because just using one lens, you might miss a big part of the picture.
Okay. So geopolitics helps explain the immediate stuff, the power plays, the strategic moves we see headlines about.
Absolutely. You needed to understand why states are acting the way they are right now based on their interests and geography.
But geocivilization gives you
Why?
the deeper context.
Yeah, the longer view, the cultural undercurrents, the historical baggage, the shared identities or deep-seated values that might be shaping things over decades or centuries.
So using both helps you get a more, complete understanding.
I think so. It helps you appreciate why different actors might see the world so differently. Their motivations might stem from immediate needs or these deeper civilizational perspectives, or likely a mix of both.
It makes things more complex, maybe, but also richer. You see more layers.
Definitely. It encourages you to look beyond just the surface politics.
Yeah.
What are the geographic realities? What are the long-term cultural forces? How do they interact?
Okay, so summing up then, we've got these two powerful frameworks.
Geopolitics, focused on the physical, the state, the short-term strategy.
And geocivilization.
Yeah.
Looking at the cultural, the long-term, the ideas that shape nations.
Both valuable but distinct ways of analyzing global power.
Right. So here's something for you, the listener, to chew on.
Okay, lay it on us.
Think about a major global issue happening right now. Anything.
Got one in mind.
Now, try analyzing it just through that geopolitical lens.
Right.
Focus on the states, their interests, geography, strategy. What does that tell you?
Okay.
Then switch gears. Look at that same event through the geocivilizational lens. Think about the cultures involved, the historical context, the values at play.
I see where you're going.
What different things jump out? What
Yeah.
new insights or maybe different explanations emerge when you use that second lens?
It's a great exercise. How do those two perspectives complement or maybe even clash in explaining what's really going on? Food for thought.